Hey, and what's up, everybody? You tuned in to another episode of Strategic Moves. I'm your host, Kenn Dowell. This is a place where we bring art, culture, politics, and business all together, and we do it every week right here on this channel. When I'm not shooting this podcast, I am the owner of Strategic Resources, where we specialize in political campaigns, government, and public relations work. I've been doing it right here in this city and this town for over 25 years, and I want to make your next move a strategic move. So this program gives me an opportunity to do just that. I get to bring on some of the people I met. We talk about some of the things that we experienced through our life, and maybe, just maybe, is something out of it that you will get that'll help you in your personal life or your professional life. So, if that sounds like something that you're interested in, all I need you to do is hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell as well, so that you'll know the next time this program's coming on. So, without further ado, we're going to get going today because we got a special guest in the house today, and she's going to bless us with some of her works that she's been doing across the city and across got books and she's selling them all over the place, not just here in Cleveland. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we get started, I want to give a warm shout out to the producer of the podcast and been helping me pull these things together, none other than DJ True. What's happening with you, brother?
Yo, what's up, Ken? We
Eh,
just in the back making it happen where
eh,
the magic happens.
Oh, everything's good, man. I'm glad to see that you all involved, and we got a new person that then came on board to help us with the podcast, and as well as some of the stuff you're gonna see a little bit about him as we get things going. He's going to come on and help us with some content creation, as well as he's going to be helping me get a few things together. So he's my new CEO of
Okay.
Strategic Resources. So I want everybody to give a warm welcome to Ezekiel Parker. What's up,
Okay,
Zeke?
let's give him the hand clap.
Man,
Yeah,
clapping.
we
Old
wanna
man Zeke is in the
show him.
house. You're going to see more and hear more about Zeke as we get going. He's working one of the cameras today, just doing some behind the scenes stuff with us. We go from there. Before we get started, we was on our radio show. And for people who don't know, we got a radio show that we do every Tuesday at 12 o'clock. It's called What's on Your Mind Tuesday. Talk to me, Cleveland, with Kenn Dowell show, and that's on WOVU 95.9 FM every Tuesday. It's a call in show where you get to call in and talk about whatever's on your mind, and we go through those things every Tuesday. So if you're not busy and you want to tune in something, please tune in and listen to us on there. But DJ, earlier today we were talking about the fact that the Cleveland Browns are now losing Miles Garrett. So now we don't have Miles Garrett. We don't have no quarterback. We don't have no running back because we lost Chubb. And we don't even have a stadium.
And then you know what's even worse?
What's that?
Kareem Hunt might win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and Kareem Hunt is
And
going to
Kareem
win the Super.
Hunt,
Is
why
going to
is it
win the Super
when people leave Cleveland, they do big things?
because they left Cleveland. Yeah, that's that part.
I
You remember
don't
that
get
part
it.
you
Come
left in
on,
there when they
man.
leave
Brown,
Cleveland.
fine. Make up with Miles Garrett. Let's get us a quarterback in there. And let's be winners. We ready to be winners out here in Cleveland.
Yeah, I think we winners without them, so we're gonna just keep it going from there. All right. So we're gonna jump into our program today because the young lady I got on the show today is somebody who we've been going around looking for guests to come on our podcast. I go around looking at other podcasts and other or groups of people and watching what people are doing out here. And I ran across this young lady's profile, and I thought that she will be a good person to come in and just have a conversation with. Without further ado, I want to introduce the young lady who's coming on our program today. She's an author and a young person I found who was doing some things around the community, and I thought it would be good to have her come on our podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you to another enlightening episode of Strategic Moves with Kenn Dowell podcast. And of course, if you're just now watching, I am your host, Kenn Dowell. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with a remarkable author, blogger, and entrepreneur who has been weaving narratives and resonating deeply within the urban community. Nicole D. Miller is here to share her journey, insight, and her latest literary works. Nicole D. Miller, I want to welcome you to our program. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Ken.
Nicole, we're going to jump into it. I do a little thing when I ask people to come on the show to just give us a little background about you. Are you from Cleveland? You from this area? You grew up here?
Yeah, so I grew up in Cleveland. I was born in Toledo. We moved to Cleveland when I was 5, and I've lived here ever since. I definitely claim Cleveland as where I'm from.
What community did you grow up in?
Garfield, ironically enough, that's where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm.
But we jumped around the east side, like Maple and Bedford. And as an adult, I lived on the west side, West 25th, Lakewood. So I'm pretty familiar with both east and west.
So you spent most of your time in the suburbs.
Yeah, I would say the black suburbs.
I understand. That's cool. What high school you went to?
I went to Nerdonia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where Nordonia at? That's on the west
So that's
side.
in
right?
Macedonia. So
That's in
on
Macedonia.
that's a real suburb.
Okay,
So
no,
when we
no.
transferred from Garfield Middle School and Elementary, I went to Nerdonia for high school.
Well, how was high school for you?
It was cool. I had my little clique there and got good grades and was able to go off to college. So it was a good launching pad for me to go to college.
What college did you go to?
Miami University in
That's
Ohio.
a good school. That's a hard school too.
Yeah, definitely got me together. I thought I was smart till I went there.
Yeah, I know. That's a really. I have 4 kids, and so I went through that of all the schools. So I know that was
Yeah.
a really. You had to have some really good grades to go there. So
Yeah, I do. I did well enough to graduate.
I tell people all the time they don't check after you graduate. They just
Right.
want to know that you graduate.
Exactly.
So long as you made it. Let's turn me down just a little bit. Thank you, sir. Nicole, your path as becoming an author is quite inspiring. Can you share with us and our listeners what enlightened your path of writing and beginning your journey? What started you into doing that?
I appreciate you saying that. One thing I love about writing is that you don't necessarily have to have a degree in writing or some type of formal training in writing. As you mentioned, I went to Miami, so my degree was in marketing and in business.
Yep.
And so I took a very unorthodox path. I ended up working in corporate for 9 years, went back and got my MBA in accounting. So my background is in accounting and finance. But because I wasn't moving forward in my career, I started blogging back when blogging was hot. And that was before podcasting. And so
Okay.
I ended up falling in love with blogging, and that inspired my very first book, How to Overcome Heartbreak, Recovering from Misguided Love. And it was that book that kind of was my launching pad into becoming a writer because it helped so many people. I got some recognition. And so where I was at a standstill in my career in the business world, I had this side hustle or gig of writing, and I released my second book, How to Overcome Heartbreak, Stories That Heal, which is a sequel, in 2015.
So let's stop right there. Let's go back to the first book because the
Yeah.
first book was what was the title again?
How to Overcome Heartbreak, Recovering from Misguided Love.
So what was the inspiration behind that book?
So it was me sharing a really difficult breakup that I went through in college. And initially I blogged about it. And the blog got so much attention that I felt led like I need to write a book to help people.
So
it
what was the blog about?
Yeah, so it was very transparent. It was really tough stuff. I was in a very serious relationship at a very young age. So I talk about instances of how that breakup affected me, but what helped me heal and get through it. And even just owning some of my own stuff. When you're that young, you don't really know who you are. You're looking for love in the wrong places. You don't know what to look for in a romantic partner. And I revisit some of those themes in the sequel to it.
Okay.
But yeah, so it was really just me being vulnerable, but also sharing about my faith in my community and how those healthy outlets helped me get through it.
So I was going to ask you, what were some of the healthy outlets and some of the things you did that helped you get through that time?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was diving into events outside of my relationship that affirmed my identity because often you can lose yourself in a relationship, especially being that young. So me being away at college was really helpful because I gained community at college. I became an RA. I started a dance ministry. It was a campus event organization. So we did events on campus. And it was being a part of the church youth ministries. I just needed to know who I was outside of that relationship, and all of these activities affirmed me in doing that. And then I had my friend group. I had mentors, spiritual leaders really undergird me and cover me during that time. So all of those things were helpful. Finding your talents, your interests, and your passions are always helpful in helping you deal with heartache because you feel like you've lost you, but you haven't. So you have to get through those spaces of I'm still here and who am I and rebuilding.
Okay. So once you got that, you was feeling good. At least you got it all off. So I'm feeling better. And so now I feel I'm healing. So you got to the next point, I guess, right? And that book was?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I never saw myself as a creative writer. So those first two books are nonfiction,
Okay.
memoirs a little bit. And it was like me taking some literary Cleveland classes. I don't know if you're hip to them. They're a literary organization in Cleveland. They do a lot of workshops, some of them free. During the
Really?
pandemic, they would be virtual. And I found this community of writers, and it
Okay.
was in one of their workshops that I wrote my very first short story. And at the time, my roommate had written a short story. I never once thought I could write a short story. I never once thought I could write a novel, anything creative, because I was very much left brained and I was accounting and finance and business. But I fell in love with creative writing and I wrote this short story titled Lisa. And it ended up being the very first short story that I published in my book, Stories for the Urban Soul. Stories for the Urban Soul is a compilation of short stories, novellas, and poetry infusing Black culture and spirituality. And it gives you a taste of my creative writing style. I released it in 2021, and that is when I got serious about being a creative writer. I kept feeling like God wanted me to take that leap, but I was so scared. Who makes money writing? I can't do this. But with that book, it was like I couldn't shake it. It was like, let me see what's on the other side of this. And when I made that decision, that is when purpose just unfolded in a whole new way in my life. So, in the process of pushing that book, I ended up writing my first novel, When Love Wins.
Okay, you be rolling. I got to slow you down. 'Cause I know you. I looked at you. You did a lot of books. I want to talk a little bit about them because you be done went through all your books real quick. So I want to go back to that first one because you said that was a series of books, right? You said
It's a series of stories, so they're shorter stories. So
Okay.
novellas aren't as long as novels, but they're longer than short stories.
so that's called a novella.
Novellas, yeah,
Okay.
and there's poetry sprinkled throughout.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the first two short stories in that book are featuring a Black-owned cafe called Devon's Cafe in New York. So what I'm doing is I am building a world with a series of books that will take place at Devon's Cafe.
Okay.
So the novel, When Love Wins, is a Devon's Cafe novel, and I'm currently working on my second novel, which will be released this summer, which is also a Devon's Cafe novel.
Let's talk about Devon's Cafe.
Okay.
So what is Devon's Cafe?
So it's chic, it's cute, it's popping. They have open mic first Friday of every month. We have spaces like that here in Cleveland, but
Okay.
I chose New York just to capture a wider audience because they're known for those things. But the owner is Devin. He's a faith-based guy, good guy. But it's just like the characters who are there. There's a waitress named Denise. She's just like cheeky, a little bit gossipy and fun and cute and all that. And then in When Love Wins, we learn her best friend is Ashley, who's the main character in When Love Wins. You meet all of these different people. Lisa frequents there. She's a writer and a journalist for a Black magazine. Everything is like Black owned. It's just like this world of where we run everything.
Correct.
White people are the minority, but they also have awakening moments of being privy to our culture. And so it humbles them. And we see white people stepping up and taking ownership. And it's like creating the world I want to see.
So this book came after the first two books, right?
So the interesting thing about Stories for the Urban Soul, I had started writing some of those short stories in 2017. My mom transitioned, and that was very pivotal for me because with grief, I could not write anymore. I stopped blogging. So I had been blogged since 2012. But when my mom transitioned, I couldn't write anymore. I couldn't blog, but I started reading a lot of creative writing, not realizing that was stirring up my gift for creative writing. So in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I had more time on my hands. I did have my own bookkeeping business. So I am a serial entrepreneur. Like I have several businesses. And so I ended up saying, you know what, let me pick up those short stories I had started. And that's when I completed Stories for the Urban Soul. So I was able to go back and heal through writing and creative writing after I took that time off through my grieving. And then with When Love Wins, both the characters lose their mom. So I was able to process my grief even more through those characters.
Probably ready to deal with it a little bit then, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like I couldn't handle it initially, and about a few years later, I was able to. But it was a little difficult because even with my editor, one of the characters wasn't going that deep into her grief, and I knew it's because I wasn't, and so it pushed me to.
So your editor asked you to get more in detail?
She said this character needs to be developed. You know, she's not responding the way she should be, and I knew it was because I didn't want to go there because she had just lost her mom.
So let me ask you a question. Like, how you write a book like that? You sit down. Now I can understand writing the first ones where because you're building that off of experience. And I'm mad at this dude. I'm mad at myself. I'm mad at everybody. So I'm going to blog it down. I'm going to write about it.
Get it out.
Now I'm feeling better about it. I'm going to tell you how you can heal from it.
Yeah.
I get that. But how you transition that to saying, I'm going to write about a guy who's sitting at a bar. I'm going to write about this lady over here. All these different characters. Where did that come from?
That's a good question. And I think it's interesting. So there are two different types of writers typically.
Okay.
You have the outliner and you have the fly by the seat of your pantser. So the outliner is someone, they have an understanding of where they want to go, what they want to write about ahead of time. And this is chapter 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, blah. You would think I would be like that because I'm left brain, I'm in accounting and finance and all this stuff. But for me, writing is like my time of creativity and letting it go and being free. And it's a time of worshiping with my creator. I feel like I'm co-creating when I'm writing. So I let it all go and I just free write. And the story tells me, it comes to me. So even with When Love Wins, I didn't know really where it was going until like chapter 9. There was this beef between both characters. The cousins had beef mainly because one cousin was jealous of the other one. I didn't know where the beef stemmed from until I got to a certain point. And then even though it is creative writing, you're still pulling off real life experiences. They're dealing with the deaths of their moms, childhood bullying, depression, anxiety, and cutting, which we don't typically talk about in the Black community, love and relationships, friendships. So you're still pulling off of real life themes that are going to touch the reader.
Interesting. I just find that very interesting how people can just come up with characters and ideas and say, hey, just what you said here, you telling me, you're like, I didn't know what they were arguing about. And I'm sitting like, how the heck can you not know? You writing the story, didn't you?
Yeah.
But you just knew they was in an argument. And somewhere down the road, you're going to figure out why they argued.
And at some point, it's going to reveal itself, and it did.
That's deep. That's deep.
I just think eternity is written in our hearts. When we tap into self and our creator in that space, it will be revealed. It'll be unleashed.
All right, so how many books you done wrote?
I think, because it's getting up there, it's like I have 4 of my own that are published. I have an ebook out called Self-Publishing 101, Everything You Need to Know from One Author to Another. So I started the publishing house. So I help other people publish, and I started that at the tail end of Stories for the Urban Soul. And then I started ghostwriting this past year. So I co-wrote 3 books this year.
Okay.
So I don't know if I could claim those because they're for the author, but I have written a lot of books. I'll say that.
And when you say publish, for our author, our people out there who don't, what is that?
So it's basically when you're putting your work out there for distributors, for other people to purchase your books. Like some people may just have a manuscript where it's not online or available for resale or in a bookstore or at the library or online. You're not technically considered a published author unless it's out there.
And you say you're a publishing house. Now, what's that?
Yeah. So we are, ND Miller Publishing is a boutique hybrid publishing house, which means we're fusing traditional publishing and self-publishing. So traditional publishing, you have the 4 or 5 major publishing houses, and it's a rat race and very competitive to get a deal. You need a lit agent, you need a query letter. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. They give you an advance. They may eat up your advance in marketing, but that was typically the way everyone did it. Indie authors started publishing themselves, and back in the day, it had a negative connotation to it because the quality wasn't there. The professionalism wasn't there. It wasn't available to the masses. Social media and the internet has really leveled the playing field, right? So now we're able to have boutique publishing houses where you keep all of your rights. You're the independent author, but I'm going to come alongside you and teach you the publishing process. And definitely each boutique house changes. Like we don't all have the same rules that we go by, but ND Miller Publishing, we specialize in debut authors because we are faith-based. We specialize in releasing stories of overcoming adversity, healing from trauma. So a lot of the books that we published, you're going to leave inspired. You're going to leave encouraged. These people have been through some stuff and they came out on the other side. So,
and you call those boutiques?
I would say ND Miller Publishing is a boutique publishing house, but we're technically considered a hybrid publisher. So any company that is going to come alongside an indie author and help them publish is considered a hybrid publisher.
Interesting. I was reading here. It said that, I wanted to ask you a question as it relates to your publishing. You're self-published multiple books, which is not a small feat. What challenges did you face in self-publishing world, in the self-publishing world, and how did you overcome those challenges?
I was just telling your associate, one of the biggest challenges is brand recognition, visibility, and being known.
Okay.
The big publishers, the reason most people fight for those opportunities is because they have the brand awareness, they have the connections with the distributors, they can get your book everywhere and everyone knows about it, so they're going to buy it. As an indie author, it's very similar to any independent creative. You're an independent musician, right? It's like getting out there and getting known. Most writers are introverts. I myself consider myself an introvert. That doesn't mean I'm not social. It just means it can be very draining for me. So I have to gear up to be social. But I felt like my part in this was to get out there and to network. And so that was my challenge, was getting brand awareness. When I started this, nobody knew me.
Okay.
So even when I started publishing in 2014, I had a level of it, but I still was a part-time creative. When I published When Love Wins, I had fully stepped away from my bookkeeping business. I dove into the Andy Miller Publishing hybrid company and focused on building my brand. And so instead of me just blogging willy-nilly like I looked at my marketing analytics. When are my people reading my blog? 7 a.m. at Monday at 7 a.m. I need to release my blog Monday at 7 a.m., which means I need to write it Sunday. So everything became scheduled. I need to show up on social media. I need to do a live on Wednesdays, Word of the Day Wednesdays. I need to send them out an email on Wednesdays because I built up my email list. Your email list is your Bible. So I had strategy, intentionality, and consistency. And then I capitalized on not just being in the literary world, but in the entrepreneurship space, in the Black entrepreneurship space, in the fitness space. I wear all of these hats and do all these different things. And then I started doing these quarterly discussions called Girl Talk. We started those online, and now it's a podcast. And so that has me in a whole nother space, and I do hosting for other events and things too.
Busy woman.
Very.
And that's Steve. You mentioned the fitness. Real quick, what is you doing in the fitness world?
So I love doing hip hop step, which
Oh.
I'm actually going to go to after this. I actually train with Ari Baker
Okay.
over at the Vault, and she's actually my new client. So we are publishing her book, Sorry for the Wait. It releases February 15th. She'll have her book launch at Milwaukee off Larchmere if you're in the area.
Okay.
So yeah, I've been doing that.
You should have her come on when she launches her book.
I definitely will. I definitely will.
Let's dive into your latest novel, When Love Wins, right?
Sure.
And the story explores complex themes within the Christian life. What inspired the narrative for this book?
As I mentioned before, the basis was that these two young women lose their moms, but they lose their moms in different time periods. We have Ashley, and they're night and day. So Ashley is like the urban socialite. She's fun, she's kicking it, but she's also very snobby. She's the one that has this angst and awe against her cousin Natalie. But she lost her mom and never really processed the grief, and so she became a mean girl of sorts. And then we have Natalie, who's like the goody two-shoes. She's the writer. She's fresh off of her grief, and so she's trying to go through the stages of healing. But she's also spiritually further along, and she feels this calling to love on Ashley anyway. So even though Ashley is being this big jerk to her, Natalie's lost her mom, and she's in shambles, she still shows the love of Christ, even through Ashley's shenanigans. Sisterhood is a huge theme. I've been the byproduct of beautiful women in my life loving on me through my stuff, me loving on them through their stuff. So I definitely can relate in that way. But I would say the recovery from grief, the impact of a mother's love, and sisterhood, which I'm a product of all of those things.
Are any of your books on audiobooks?
So When Love Wins is, so you can go to Audible and get it. Yeah.
Did you do it?
I did.
Oh, excellent. I might get that for my daughter for good. Faith and spirituality are central in your storytelling. How do you balance these elements with the reality of urban life in your writing?
I love that question. And I think that the key word to me is balance. And the word I like to use is infuse. I think historically, the church has done a poor job of really meeting people where they are. And there's been this view of God that he's just so far above and away from us. And I really aim in my stories to show that he is love with skin on. He is with us in the day-to-day and the everyday. And we're human because we're made in his image, and he has that element of humanity. So there's laughter, there's fun, there is music, there's dancing, there's food, right? God is not stoic. And so I really try to show that these people who have a faith are still people. They still are going through things or feel a kind of way about things, but it really is his love that shines through.
And this question might be close to what you just said, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Okay.
Your works often touch themes like grief, mental health, and resilience. Why do you feel it's important to highlight these topics in your stories with everything that's going on today?
I would say, obviously, I personally experienced those things, but having Girl Talk really showed me that what you think you're going through, other people are going through too. So we can be so isolated and lost in the hardships of this life. But when we come together, or you read someone else's story, or you hear someone else's story, and it resonates with you, I think you can be encouraged to know you're not alone. And so clearly, our climate here, politically and otherwise, is wild right now. People need hope. And I think that those of us who have hope are accountable to give it. And we can definitely edify each other when we open our mouths and share our stories.
You mentioned earlier about your entrepreneurship with Indie Miller Publishing, and you wanted to just get a little bit more out of you about the mission of that, or your mission of that publishing house and everything. So give us some background, or what is your true mission of why you think it was important for you to partner with them?
What is so interesting, I will give you some tea. I never saw myself doing a publishing company, and it was probably 2018 when my mom passed that a woman in my life who is a spiritual mother of sorts gave me a word, and she said, "You're going to have a publishing house one day." The interesting thing is, at the time, I had a bookkeeping company. I saw myself as a bookkeeper. I was just kind of, I'm putting that word on the shelf. She has historically spoken things into my life that were very accurate, but that one, I was like, I don't know. Fast forward 4 years, her daughter comes to me and says, "I want you to publish my book." Her daughter became my very first client. I really was trying to give her my ebook. Girl,
Okay.
just read the book. It's cool. I want you to publish me. So it was something that came to me, but now I understand the need for Black stories of resiliency, faith-based stories that release hope, to be released to transform communities. Because at the end of the day, when I look at all of my projects, all of the things I do, the theme behind it is community transformation.
Everybody feel they got a story, and I'm sure soon as you run into somebody and you tell them what they do, they say, "Can you write my story?" I'm sure you get that all the time. For everybody that's listening out here who wants to write a book, but they don't want to write it, let's put it that way, because there's a lot of people want to write a book but don't want to write it. What are the steps you should take?
It just depends on how you're wired, because remember I said there's two different types of writers. So my first thought is you can do an outline if that's your thing. Honestly, people have it so easy now with AI, and that's like a bad word in the literary community, but you can Google topics to get you going. But honestly, I would say if you really struggle, because this is how I've gotten my clients who I've worked with for ghostwriting, you can get a ghostwriter. Some of my clients are actually writers. Like one of them actually wrote other books. But the story she wanted to tell with me was so traumatic that she couldn't say it herself. She needed someone to hold her hand and put words to what she had experienced.
So take me through that process. Somebody who wants a ghostwriter, what they do, they sit down with you and you just take a lot of notes, or how does that go?
I do take a lot of notes. We do the video calls.
Oh, so a video call, okay.
I recognize the way that I'm wired. I'm empathetic. I can hear, and it feels like it's me. I can hear your story. I can put myself in your shoes. I can see it through your viewpoint. I'm very intentional to pull out your vernacular to make it sound like it's you. And I also do think that these have been divine partnerships. So people that have been brought to me, it's like I'm tailor-made to write their story. I especially felt that way with Ari's book. It was like so many similarities that we had went through. I was like, I am made to write this book. So some of it is just us being in alignment and having that connection, and then my own gifts to be able to empathetically understand where you're coming from and give you the words to share.
Is any different in men and women in doing that?
I haven't worked with a man yet, but honestly, I don't think it would be different for me because it's about the person's experience and me being empathetic to that.
Yeah, because I would think that I know a few men who have wrote books, and I think they always, when I talk to them about it, they usually get a ghostwriter or they working with somebody who help them put it together. And I never quite knew what a ghostwriter did. I figured they wrote it, but I didn't know if they actually wrote the story and you
Yeah.
looked it over, or was they working with you?
And that varies, right? I think some of these celebs are people who don't have as much time on their hands. So maybe they couldn't do the video chats. Maybe they had written material already down. But some kind of way, they have to work with the writer for the writer to know their story enough to make it accurate.
So the first thing you do is you say you should have some kind of idea of what you want to write
You definitely need that.
about, right? And then from that standpoint, try to get with somebody to help you put those thoughts together, it sounds, right?
Yeah, and it depends. If you're writing a memoir, and I do writing coaching sessions, so that's the stuff that I would tell a client for writing coaching. You can pull other journal entries or blog posts or other writings that you've done and see if you can compile some things together that can help you get started.
So who are some of your favorite writers?
It's a really good question. I would say Francine Rivers, she's a Christian fiction writer and she writes volumes of books and her characters are so detailed and the plot is so intense that I've devoured some of her books. I fell in love with the 90s classics like the Fly Girls and the Sister Soldiers, that stuff. And I actually am very influenced by that type of writing. And so I pick up on that style. People will read my books and be like, it makes them feel like the 90s classics.
Okay.
But yeah, I read a variety of books.
And what's the biggest book you wrote?
So you mean longest book?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
So
What's the longest book
yeah,
you wrote?
When Love Wins was definitely very, very meaty. And that was because I didn't know there's like a typical word count for different genres. This go around, I was very intentional with the novel. But it's just interesting because I never thought I could write a novel that was so intimidating to me. So to be able to pour out like that, I was like, I didn't know I had it in me.
Wow. And I did. You just said something else I found true. You said there's different word counts for different genres?
There's different literary rules, different genres,
Yeah.
an autobiography versus a memoir versus a fiction, nonfiction, children's book.
I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
just thought you just wrote till you wrote. So you try to keep them within a certain number. Of
Yeah,
counts.
and if you're like going to apply to the traditional publishing companies, they're looking for stuff like that. They'll weed you out if it's
Really?
too long. Oh yeah.
Wow. So what's your favorite type of book to read?
That's a good question. I feel like I love urban culture. So when I think about, and a lot of times I'm audiobooking it because I don't have time to sit
Right.
and read anymore, especially when I'm writing and reading my client stuff. But I definitely like the romance, black romance books, that sort of
Hallmark,
thing.
you got the Hallmark channel on your
Yeah,
your book.
I've definitely been told like Stories of the Urban Soul is a definite nod at Hallmark, and I do give off Hallmark vibes. Like my Instagram, and when the holidays come, I'm all about the decor and the
Okay.
pajamas and all the things. Yes, that
Well,
is
that's
me.
cool. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong
Black
with that.
Hallmark for sure.
Nicole, as we wrap up, what can readers expect to hear from you? What you got coming up? What new projects you got going?
Yeah, there are definitely some things. So, Girl Talk, we will have that next month. And I'm very excited because we're actually going to feature all men.
So no, let's talk about Girls
Okay.
Talk because you do a lot, and like I said, we're good on time. So tell me, what's Girls Talk? What's that?
So, Girl Talk is a panel discussion of all women. We meet quarterly and we dialogue on women's issues. Our very first one was, Are you a feminist? We've talked about Are good friends hard to find? We've talked about Does Black love still exist? So we go deep and it's very authentic and transparent and vulnerable, but it's really giving female leaders a safe space for them to, I say, take their cape off and really enter into an empathetic experience. Because as women leaders and leaders in general, you're carrying the world and you don't really have those safe spaces to build sisterhood and to edify each other.
So where y'all usually do those at?
We've been doing them at Ink Therapy Studio, which
Okay.
is in Bedford, which is a tattoo parlor, but it's very chic and cute, owned by my girl Butter.
Okay.
We did do one at Unbar Cafe off Larchmere. They
Unbar.
actually sponsored us last year in March, but mostly we've done them at Ink Therapy. The next one, since it's featuring all men, will be at the Gentleman's Cave off Chagrin.
Now let's talk about this all men thing. What you got going with the men?
I'm excited for this one because we've never had any of the men in any of our, some of them will attend, of course, but we've never had them featured as panelists. So I really want to give them a space. I hate to say clap back because I don't want it to be like a negative thing, but I want to give them a space to chime in on
Express
some of our
themselves.
topics. Yeah, and be
Yeah.
like, okay, y'all didn't get to talk about this. And my real goal is to build that brotherhood and create that space that's safe for them to be vulnerable and share their emotions.
Do you know some of the topics y'all gonna talk about with the brothers?
Yeah, so some of them will definitely be the ones that we've discussed as Girl Talk, and then I'll come up with questions that specifically pertain to male culture.
And how you gonna pick the brothers?
I already have them picked.
You already have them picked. You got
Yeah.
a different group of them. Are they all in one age?
These are men that I've connected with on the entrepreneurial path of purpose. So
Okay.
they're all male leaders doing
Okay.
their thing, heavy hitters,
Okay.
killing it.
Okay. And when is this?
March 23rd.
March 23rd,
Yep.
and it's gonna be at Ink Therapy.
No, it's actually going to be at the Gentleman's Cave.
All right, that's correct.
Yeah.
You said it, and the Gentleman's
Yeah.
Cave. You said is on Carnegie,
It's on Chagrin.
Chagrin.
Yeah.
Oh, I know where that is. It's out in Shaker, right?
Yeah, that's Shaker.
That's
yeah.
Shaker,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Yeah, I think that's Shaker.
It's like Warren, the corner of Warrensville.
yeah,
goes
want that little
Yeah.
area over in there. Yeah, I know exactly
Like
where
Van
you're going to
Aken,
be.
like
Exactly.
a little bit across from Van Aken.
For aspiring writers in the audience, especially those who are looking for self-published, do you have any advice to offer them?
Be patient. It is such a process. I will say I've been at this 11 years now, full time the last 3. I still am not where I want to be, although I've made a lot of progress. But you got to keep believing in your dream.
That's
Like I look
correct.
at the grades, I look at Tyler Perry. I watch so many documentaries and I read so many people's books. When you talk about books, it's probably like the people's stories who made it and overcame and did their
Correct.
thing. Those are the
Correct.
ones that are so inspiring to me. And even watching Tyler Perry's last documentary, what was on my heart was like, there have been people who have had less who believed for more. So he came from like dire circumstances, impoverishment, sexual abuse, all this stuff, but said he was going to be friends with Oprah one day. And look what happened. He's friends with Oprah. So those are the inspiring stories for me. Kevin Hart is another one. I loved his memoir so much. Like the way that he grind, I'm like, yes. So I would say be patient and keep grinding.
Hey, I really appreciate you coming on our show. I knew you was going to be great. Very good conversation. You enlightened us on new stuff, new people. I like meeting new people, and we like expressing that and bringing new people on. DJ, I always do this before I leave. You got something you want to say before I go, man?
Yes. Do you think you'll write a movie one day from one of these books?
My heart of hearts is that my books will be movies or be on Netflix and Hulu. So we'll see.
You think you can write a movie?
I don't know if I necessarily want to. I could enter into a phase where I want to, but right now I really like writing books.
Excellent. Again, I want to thank you for coming on our program. You did an excellent job. I want you, as we do with all of our programs, we're going to close out our program by letting you look right there in that camera and you get a chance to tell the world what you got going. Is there anything that's on your mind or anything that you want the people to know? If you got something that new books or anything that's coming out, and where people can find all your products. Make sure you give them your website and all of that good information. And people, we're going to make sure all of her stuff is in the description. So when you go in the description of this video, you will find links to all her website and her information. She has a couple of websites and all kinds of stuff out there. And we'll make sure that you'll have that in the description so that you can find these books that she's talking about. So, Miss Nicole D. Miller, I'm going to turn it over to you for this camera.
So yes, my name is Nicole D. Miller. You can learn more about me at NicoleDMiller.com. If you'd like to learn more about When Love Wins, my debut novel, you can go to whenlovewins.love. You can subscribe to my email list and my blog. I release a weekly blog and a monthly newsletter. You can also follow me on Instagram at HTOHB, which stands for How to Overcome Heartbreak. You can follow the publishing house on Instagram at ND Miller Publishing. You can follow Girl Talk at Girl Talk CLE. You can follow my business page on Facebook, facebook.com/HTOHB, and join the Facebook community and join the Girl Talk community. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn.
I told y'all she had a lot of places to find her. No excuse not to find her. That's what I'm telling you. When I looked, she was loaded. So you can find her. She's a very interesting woman. She got a lot of stuff going on out there. She has a lot of very good spirit and very good soul. So make sure you check out her books. And again, we'll have all the links to how you can reach Miss Nicole D. Miller in the description of her video. And I want to thank you guys for watching our program, and we will see you next week. Peace. Great job.